I never imagined a simple airport drop-off would be the moment my entire life cracked open. The fluorescent ceiling lights flickered above me at Atlanta's airport, making everything look a little too bright, too harsh, almost like the universe was trying to warn me, but I wasn't listening. I stood there with my husband, Darius, who looked polished as always. Perfect charcoal suit, polished shoes, trimmed beard, and that expensive cologne he loved to drown himself in. To anyone watching, he looked like the dream husband. To me, he was familiar, predictable. The man I had followed through 8 years of marriage without ever questioning who he really was. Our 6-year-old son, Mateo, held my hand tightly. Mateo was always quiet, always observing, but today his silence felt heavier. I felt his little fingers trembling, but I thought he was just sad about saying goodbye. Darius gave his scripted goodbye, hugged me, kissed my forehead, bent down dramatically to Mateo and ruffled his hair. "Look after your mom for me, champ." Mateo didn't smile, didn't say a word. I should have noticed something was wrong right then. Darius grabbed his carry-on, straightened his tie, and walked toward TSA with the same confidence he used for everything: business meetings, neighborhood barbecues, even arguments. He never rushed, never stumbled. People like that usually have something to hide. I just didn't know it yet. When he disappeared into the crowd, I exhaled and turned to take Mateo back to the parking garage. "Come on, sweetheart, let's go home." That's when he froze. Completely. His sneakers squeaked on the polished floor as he yanked my hand so hard, I nearly stumbled. "Mom!" His voice cracked. "We can't go back." I crouched in front of him, confused. "What are you talking about? Of course we're going home." His eyes, big, brown, terrified, lifted to mine. "Mom, I heard Daddy this morning. He was talking to someone on the phone. He said something bad was going to happen to us tonight. He said he had to be gone when it happened." His chin quivered. "Please believe me this time." This time hit me hard, because he wasn't wrong. He'd told me things before. Things I brushed aside, strange cars outside our house, whispered conversations in Darius's office late at night. The way his father's voice sounded different sometimes, colder. I had dismissed all of it, called it imagination, told myself Mateo was just nervous or misunderstood things. But right now, his fear was too real to ignore. I took his face in my hands. "Okay, I hear you. We're not going home yet." He exhaled with relief, but the fear stayed in his eyes. I didn't know what we were running from. I didn't know if my son was right or if I was losing my mind. But I turned us around and headed toward the parking deck with one thought burning in my chest. If Darius had truly planned something, we were already out of time. When I pulled out of the airport garage that night, I had no idea the first thing I would see outside my home was a van that didn't belong and men who definitely weren't supposed to have a key. The drive from the airport felt unreal, like I was watching someone else's life unfold from outside my own body. Mateo sat in the back seat, clutching his backpack like a shield. Every few minutes, his eyes darted to the window, tracking shadows and headlights like he expected danger to leap out at us. Maybe he wasn't wrong. I didn't take our usual route home. My instincts screamed not to. Instead, I circled through side streets, passing familiar houses that suddenly felt unfamiliar. When we finally turned onto the street behind ours, I parked beneath the canopy of a massive oak tree. From here, we could see the back of our house through the branches, the kitchen windows glowing faintly from the motion lights. I stared at the home I decorated, cooked in, laughed in, the place I thought was safe. "Mom?" Mateo whispered, leaning forward. "Look." A dark van crept down our street. No markings, no license plate on the front. The kind of vehicle you only see in crime documentaries or your worst nightmares. My grip on the steering wheel tightened as it rolled to a slow stop directly in front of our driveway. "What is that?" I breathed. 2 men stepped out, black hoodies, gloves, faces partially covered. They didn't look like delivery drivers or technicians. They didn't look lost. They looked like they belonged to the shadows. Mateo's voice trembled. "Those aren't police, right?" "No," I whispered. "They're not." One of the men scanned up and down the street, checking for neighbors, cameras, anyone watching. The other reached into his pocket, and for a split second, I prayed he'd pull out something harmless, a clipboard, a tool, a flashlight. But instead, he pulled out a key. My stomach dropped so fast I felt sick. They walked to our front door and unlocked it like they lived there, like it was their home, their right, their job. Only 3 people had keys: me, Darius, and the emergency spare hidden in his locked desk drawer. Which meant they didn't break in. They were let in. I covered my mouth to muffle a cry. "Mom," Mateo whispered, tears streaming silently, "Daddy gave them that key." I didn't answer because deep inside, I knew he was right. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Lights flickered inside the house, not from lamps, but from something handheld. Flashlights. They were searching, maybe placing something, maybe preparing for something. Then a thin veil of smoke curled out from the kitchen window. My chest seized. No, no, no! A small burst of orange lit up behind the curtains, then another deeper inside the house. Flames grew like they'd been waiting for permission, stretching up the walls, swallowing rooms we once lived in. Within minutes, the entire living room was roaring. The men ran out, jumped into the van, and sped off without headlights. My home, everything I had, every memory, was burning. Mateo sobbed into his hands, and all I could do was pull him into my arms, shaking as we watched the fire consume our life. I didn't call 911. Someone else did, probably a neighbor. Sirens wailed in the distance, while the house we thought we would return to turned into a furnace. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Darius. "Just landed. Hope you and Mateo are tucked in safe. Love you both." My hands went numb. He knew. He knew we were supposed to be inside. He knew exactly what was happening. Mateo looked up at me, terrified. "Mom, what do we do now?" I didn't know. But one thing was certain. We could never go back. With nowhere safe to run, I remembered something. A name my late father once whispered to me during his final days. A name he said to use only if I was ever in real danger. And that moment had finally come. Smoke still curled into the night sky when the fire trucks arrived, their flashing lights reflecting off the scattered pieces of my former life. I held Mateo close as we watched from our hidden spot. But he wasn't looking at the flames anymore. He was looking at me, waiting for answers I didn't have. My mind raced through every option. We couldn't go to friends. Every friend we had was connected to Darius. We couldn't go to family. They lived hours away, and if Darius truly planned this, he'd expect me to run to them. We certainly couldn't walk up to the police and explain that my husband, the man currently giving Oscar-worthy tears to the news cameras, had staged this. No one would believe me. They'd believe him. But then, something surfaced in my memory. A face, a voice, a moment I had almost buried. 2 years earlier, when my father was in the hospital nearing the end of his cancer battle, he handed me a small cardstock business card. He'd been weak, voice raspy, but his eyes were clear. "Keep this, Maya," he told me. "You may never need it, but if you ever find yourself in a situation where you feel trapped, where you can't trust the people closest to you, call her." Her? At the time, I thought he was just paranoid about Darius. I brushed it off. Now, I understood. My father had seen something I didn't. I dug through my purse, half melted from the heat of the burning home, until my fingers found the card wedged between receipts. Marisol Devine, family law and crisis attorney. Atlanta number, private office address. My hands shook as I dialed. One ring, two, three. A voice answered. Calm, strong, older. This is Marisol. I swallowed hard. Miss Devine, my name is Maya Torres. My father was Samuel Torres. He gave me your number before he passed. Silence. A long one. Then, I remember your father, she said, her tone sharpening. What's happening? It's bad, I whispered, glancing at Mateo curled in the back seat. My house just burned down. Someone set it on purpose, and I think my husband planned it. There was no gasp on the other end, no disbelief, just a simple, "Are you and your son safe?" "For now," I replied. "Can you drive?" "Yes." "Good. I'm texting you an address. Come now. And Maya." "Yes?" "Don't go anywhere public. Don't call anyone else. And don't go near your husband." Her certainty sent chills down my spine. I hung up, started the engine, and drove. The address led us to a small brick building tucked in a quiet district, the kind of place you'd never look at twice. No flashy sign, just a dim light over the door and a brass plaque, M. Devine, Legal Services. Before I could knock, the door opened. A woman in her late 50s stood there, silver-streaked curls pulled back, glasses perched on her nose. Her eyes assessed me in seconds, red from crying, soot on my clothes, hands trembling. She didn't ask for confirmation. "Maya," she said. "Come in." Inside smelled like old books and strong coffee. She locked the door behind us with 3 heavy bolts. Mateo clung to my arm, exhausted but alert. "Put the child on the couch, then sit. Tell me everything from the moment you left the airport," she instructed, gently. So I did. I told her about the van, the men, the key, the fire, the timing, Darius's text pretending to be concerned. Every detail I could remember tumbled out as I cried, trembled, and tried not to fall apart. Marisol listened without interrupting. Not a single word, not a single expression of shock. When I finished, she folded her hands and spoke with a certainty that made my skin prickle. "Maya, your husband didn't just attempt something drastic. He's been planning this for a long time." I stared at her, breath frozen. "What do you mean?" She reached for a locked drawer and pulled out a thick folder, one with my father's handwriting on the tab. "He suspected Darius years ago, and he left me everything I'd need to protect you." And then she opened the folder, and what I saw inside made me realize my husband had been living a double life much darker than I ever imagined. The folder Marisol placed on the desk was thicker than anything I expected. My father's handwriting, steady, neat, familiar, ran across the top in blue ink. "For Maya, if needed." My throat tightened. Marisol opened the folder slowly, almost ceremonially, as though she'd been waiting years for this moment. Inside were photographs, printed emails, bank statements, and handwritten notes my father had taken before he died. "Maya," she began, her voice low but firm, "your father was worried about Darius long before you were." I blinked, stunned. "But Dad liked him. At least he pretended to." "He tolerated him because you loved him," she corrected. "But he also saw the things you were trained to overlook." She pulled out a stack of papers. 2 years ago, shortly before his health declined, your father hired a private investigator to quietly look into Darius's finances and associates. My heart slammed against my ribs. "What? Why?" "Because your father noticed that every time he gave you money, it disappeared quickly. Because Darius always asked questions about family assets. Because he had a temper he hid impeccably. And because the man was charming in a way that made your father uneasy." She slid a bank statement toward me. My eyes widened when I recognized the account. My inheritance account. The one Darius told me he was managing so it'd grow. The account was nearly empty.
completely drained over the span of 18 months. What is all this? My voice cracked. Your inheritance. Gone, Marisol said matter-of-factly, transferred into shell accounts linked to gambling circles. Your husband has a severe addiction, Maya. Gambling, high-risk betting, debts that have multiplied with interest and threats. I shook my head, tears burning. No, he always said he was investing. Investing? She let out a bitter laugh. He was funneling your money to repay violent lenders. And when that wasn't enough, he turned to fraud. When that didn't work, he looked at the one guaranteed payout left. I froze. The insurance. Yes, she opened another section of the folder. The policy your father insisted on when you married, a $2 million life insurance plan under your name. Darius knew that if something happened to you and the child included in that policy, it would solve everything, pay off debts, save his reputation, and give him a clean slate. But killing us? I whispered. That can't be real. It can't. Marisol leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. You saw the flames with your own eyes. You saw men using your house key. You told me your son heard him say he needed to be gone when it happened. He calculated this, he arranged it, and he made sure his alibi was airtight. I felt my entire body tremble. The room seemed to shrink around me. This can't be happening, I said, voice barely audible. Marisol softened. I know this is hard to accept, but your father saw the danger long before you ever suspected anything, and he prepared for this moment. She tapped the folder. This evidence confirms Darius is neck-deep in illegal debt, connected to dangerous individuals, and desperate enough to plan something like this. I put my hands over my face and took a shaky breath. Mateo slept quietly on the couch, unaware that his world had been ripped apart. What do we do now? I whispered. Marisol didn't hesitate. You don't go to the police yet, not until we have the final piece. What final piece? The evidence in your house. Men like Darius keep records, burner phones, hidden notebooks, private documents, and if he gave those men your key, he probably kept the spares or details in his office. My heart lurched. But the house is damaged, not destroyed, and tonight, when the scene clears, we're going in. I stared at her, stunned. You want me to go back inside? Into a burned house? With my son? She shook her head. Your son will stay here with me. You'll go in with gloves, a flashlight, and a plan. No, I whispered, fear creeping in. What if the men come back? They won't, she said calmly. Not until the morning. And by then, we'll be long gone. With everything we need. I swallowed hard, fighting panic and nausea. But Maya, she added quietly, you need to understand, once you retrieve that evidence, everything changes. Darius will realize the plan failed, and he'll stop pretending. I didn't know it yet, but breaking into my burned home would reveal secrets far worse than anything I found in that folder, and someone else would be inside the ruins waiting for us.
Night fell thick over the city, settling like a weight on my chest as Marisol and I prepared to do something I never imagined, sneak back into the charred skeleton of my home. Mateo slept in the office's back room, curled beneath one of Marisol's old knitted blankets. Before I left, I kissed his forehead and promised I'd be back before he woke up. A promise I prayed I'd keep. Marisol handed me dark clothing and thin tactical gloves. You'll blend in better, she explained, and you won't leave prints. She also gave me a small flashlight and a backpack. My nerves were vibrating. Are you sure the property won't be crawling with police still? They'll be gone after the investigators finish their initial sweep, she said with unsettling certainty. Arson cases take days, but they only guard the site for the first few hours. Budget cuts. It works in our favor. Her confidence was terrifying. We drove in silence to the neighborhood's back entrance, where a tall privacy wall separated the community from a patch of woods. Marisol knew exactly where to go. A section of wall lower than the rest. You jump down first. I'll follow. I dropped into the dirt with a quiet thud. The smell of smoke still lingered heavily in the air,
acrid, suffocating. Marisol climbed down behind me, surprisingly gracefully for a woman her age. Our burned home stood like a blackened skeleton against the night sky. The front yard was taped off, but the backyard was accessible through the ruined gate. "Remember," she whispered, "we're in and out in under 20 minutes." That became much harder when we stepped inside. The house was unrecognizable. The walls were charred, weakened, furniture melted into unrecognizable shapes, glass cracked and warped. Every step stirred ash that floated into the air like gray snow. Memories of birthdays, holidays, quiet nights, all turned to dust. But Darius's office? It had survived. Not untouched, but far better than the rest of the house. The fire must not have spread far enough before it was extinguished. "This is where he kept everything," I whispered. We stepped inside the office, and with shaking hands, I moved the damaged painting that once covered the wall safe. The keypad was scorched, but functional. I typed in his birthday, the code he arrogantly assumed I'd never notice. A soft click. The safe opened. Inside were stacks of cash, documents, passports, a burner phone, and a slim black notebook. I felt sick. My husband hadn't been planning for our future. He'd been preparing for his escape. "Take it all," Marisol urged. I shoved everything into the backpack. Then, "Maya," a small voice whispered behind me. I froze. It wasn't Marisol. I spun around to see Mateo standing in the hallway, face pale and eyes wide. "Mateo?" My voice cracked. "What are you doing here? You were supposed to stay with Marisol." He shook his head, trembling. "I woke up and you were gone. I didn't want you to leave me. I followed her." Before I could respond, a noise echoed downstairs. A door. Closing. Marisol stiffened. "Someone else is here." My blood turned cold. Voices drifted up. Low, rough, familiar. "Check the rooms. Boss wants confirmation." It was the same men who'd set the fire. They weren't gone. They came back to make sure the job was finished. Marisol whispered urgently, "Closet, now!" We slipped into the office closet, closing the slotted door carefully. Mateo clung to my shirt, shaking. Footsteps approached. Flashlight beams flickered under the door. Then a man's voice. "Safe's open." My heart stopped. That means someone was here, recently. Another voice, deeper, answered, "Then they're still in the house, spread out." Mateo buried his face into my stomach to keep from sobbing. We were trapped, cornered, and one creaking floorboard away from being found. But just when I thought everything was lost, a single, unexpected scream shattered the silence and changed the entire course of that night. The footsteps were getting closer, heavy boots crunching over debris and broken glass. I held Mateo so tightly I could feel his heartbeat pounding against my ribs. Marisol stayed perfectly still beside us, her breath barely stirring the air. Through the thin slats of the closet door, we watched the flashlight beams sweep back and forth across the ruined office. Then the dipper voice spoke again. "Tracks lead upstairs. Someone was here. Maybe still is." My stomach twisted. They were going to check every room. Mateo clung to me harder, eyes shining with fear. I pressed my palm gently over his mouth, silently begging him not to make a sound. One cry, one gasp, and we were done. The taller man stepped into the office. His boots stopped inches from the closet door. I could see the handle of a gun at his hip, the edge of a scar running down his wrist. He leaned toward the open safe. "This wasn't touched by cops. Dust patterns are too clean. Someone opened this tonight." The other man joined him. "Then the boss ain't gonna like this." Boss? They were talking about Darius. It made bile rise in my throat. The taller man continued. "We sweep the whole place. If they're here, they won't get far." He took a step toward the closet. My heart froze. One more step, one hand on the doorknob, and A piercing scream tore through the house. It echoed off the scorched walls, sharp and raw, coming from somewhere near the back entrance. "What the hell was that?" the shorter man shouted. The taller one cursed, "Someone's here! Go!" They bolted out of the room, footsteps thundering down the hallway and back toward the kitchen area. Marisol grabbed my arm. "Move, now." I didn't need to be told twice. We slipped out of the closet, sprinting down the damaged stairs, trying to avoid loose boards and charred floor sections. Mateo kept up surprisingly well, fear giving him speed. The entire house creaked under the weight of our rush. We emerged out the back door and into the cold night air. Smoke still hung in the yard like a ghost. 2 blocks away, near the fence where we'd climbed over earlier, stood Marisol's friend, the source of the scream, a wiry woman in her 40s with quick eyes and a voice loud enough to wake the dead. "You're late," she hissed as we approached. "I almost thought that scream wouldn't work." "You scared the hell out of them," Marisol replied. "Perfect timing." The woman smirked. Professionals or not, grown men still jump at a banshee yell. Meanwhile, footsteps and shouts echoed from inside the house. The men were still searching, confused and panicked. We hurried toward Marisol's car parked down the street. Mateo clung to me, shaking. I lifted him into the back seat, jumped in beside him, and Marisol slammed the driver's door shut. "Are they going to follow us?" I asked, breathless. "Not if we leave now." The tires screeched as she pulled away. Only when we were several blocks away did my pulse begin to slow. Mateo collapsed against me, burying his face into my jacket. I kissed his head softly. "It's okay, baby. We're safe." But Marisol wasn't celebrating. "Let them find the safe empty," she said, eyes hard. "Let them panic. That panic is going to make Thaddeus desperate. And desperation makes men sloppy." I clutched the backpack filled with Thaddeus's secret life. Burner phones, cash, documents, and the black notebook. "What now?" I asked. Marisol's lips curled into a thin, strategic smile. "Now we study everything we took, and tomorrow morning we go to someone who can actually bring your husband down." But when we opened the notebook and the burner phone later that night, the truth inside was so dark, so cold, it made the fire feel like mercy compared to what Thaddeus had really planned.
Back at Marisol's office, the adrenaline finally began to wear off, leaving me shaky and nauseated. Mateo curled on the sofa again, his eyes half open but too exhausted to stay awake. I wrapped him in the blanket and kissed his cheek, whispering, "It's over for tonight. You're safe." I wasn't sure if I was reassuring him or myself. Marisol cleared a space on her desk, motioning for me to sit beside her. The backpack, the one filled with proof Darius never intended for me to see, sat like a bomb between us. "Let's begin," she said quietly. I unzipped the bag with trembling hands. Cash bundles spilled out first, rubber-banded and still smelling faintly of smoke. Then the fake IDs, the burner phone, the black notebook, thin, worn, and terrifying. Marisol put on latex gloves and opened the notebook carefully. The first few pages were mundane, lists of numbers, dates, initials. But halfway through, everything changed. Words written in Darius's precise handwriting, calculated and emotionless. Debt, $420K due. Collectors, no extensions. Options narrowing, need solution. My heart sank deeper with every line. Then the entry that made my skin crawl. If M and the boy weren't in the way, everything would be solvable. Marisol and I exchanged a horrified glance. "He wrote this about us," I whispered. "Months ago." She nodded grimly. "This wasn't sudden panic. He's been considering eliminating you for a long time." But it got worse. On the next page, underlined twice, insurance payout $2 million, must look accidental. And then, fire easiest, no loose ends. Loose ends. He meant us. The room spun slightly. I gripped the edge of the desk to keep from collapsing. Maya, Marisol said gently, this is proof of intent, the strongest kind. It ties motive, method, and premeditation together. I stared at the words my husband wrote, the man who used to bring me flowers, tuck Mateo in at night, and kiss my forehead in the mornings. Every stroke of ink tore another piece of those memories apart. How? How could he think like this? I choked. When people become desperate and addicted, morality becomes a luxury they can't afford, and Darius stopped caring about anything but survival long ago. She reached for the burner phone next. It was scorched but intact. Her tech contact from earlier arrived, a nerdy-looking guy with tired eyes in the laptop. He introduced himself only as Drew, sat down, plugged in equipment, and said, "Give me 10 minutes." It took him 6. When the phone unlocked, messages flooded the screen. Dozens of them. Texts from numbers labeled only by letters, M, J, L. Most were threats, warnings, demands for money, then a thread labeled M, the same voice we'd heard inside the burning house. Darius, needs to be done before midnight. I'm flying out. Alibi secured. M, woman and kid both in the house? Darius, yes. Make it fast, no mistakes. M, payment? Darius, half already sent, the other half after. I covered my mouth to stifle a sob. He negotiated the murder of his own family, like someone ordering a service package. Message after message confirmed everything. He arranged the timing. He provided the access. He paid for the arson. He wanted us gone. And I would have been, if Mateo hadn't whispered those words at the airport. Maya, Marisol's voice was steady, grounding. With this, we can bury him legally. I wiped my tears, breathing through the panic. So, we go to the police now? She shook her head. Not just any police. Someone who can't be bribed, someone who won't tip Darius off, someone who has dealt with cases like this. And who is that? I called him already. Detective Rowan Pierce, homicide, one of the most incorruptible officers in Atlanta. I frowned. But homicide? Marisol closed the folder. Maya, this was attempted homicide, and Darius isn't finished. Once he learns the fire didn't kill you, her eyes darkened. He will try again. And that became terrifyingly clear the next morning when Darius himself agreed to meet me in public, and everything spiraled out of control.
Morning light crawled into Marisol's office like a slow, unwanted guest. I hadn't slept at all. I sat on the couch with Mateo nestled against me, watching him breathe in small, peaceful rhythms. The only calm left in my life. Today, everything would shift. Darius would realize his plan hadn't worked. He would know we were alive, and once that happened, he wouldn't hesitate to try again. Marisol came in holding 2 phones, mine and the burner we'd extracted evidence from. "Are you ready?" she asked. "No, absolutely not." But I nodded anyway. She handed me my phone. "He's been trying to call you since 4 a.m. I told you not to answer until we were prepared." I scrolled through the missed calls. 25. Text messages. Dozens. But the most recent one sent a chill straight down my spine. "Maya, I know you're alive. We need to talk. It's urgent." Not worried, not relieved, not grateful, just urgent. The word guilty men use when they're losing control. Marisol crossed her arms. "Text him back now. Suggest a public place, somewhere open, crowded, with surveillance everywhere." My hands shook. And what do I say? Say you want answers. Say you're willing to meet. She leaned closer. "He'll show up. He needs to know how much you found and what you plan to do." I typed slowly, my stomach twisting. "Centennial Park, near the fountains. 10 a.m. Come alone. The reply came almost instantly, like he'd been staring at his phone waiting for my message. I'll be there. Please, Maya, we can fix this. Fix. A word he'd used countless times whenever he manipulated me into silence. Marisol grabbed her briefcase. Detective Pierce's team is already prepping. Undercover officers will be scattered throughout the park. You'll be wired. Don't confront him directly, just keep him talking. What if he refuses to say anything incriminating? He won't, she said. Fear changes men, makes them reckless. 10 a.m., Centennial Park. The sun reflected off the water jets of the fountains, making the whole place look deceptively peaceful. Families walked dogs, joggers passed by, kids fed pigeons, and yet scattered among them were plainclothes officers, a man pretending to read a map, a woman selling bottled water, an older couple with matching hats. I sat on a bench, microphone taped beneath my collarbone. Mateo was safe at the office with Marisol's assistant. I repeated that to myself over and over. You're doing this for him. For both of you. Then I saw him. Darius. But he didn't look like the polished man from the airport. He looked frayed. His suit wrinkled, hair unkempt, eyes darkened with sleepless panic. He spotted me and rushed over with an expression that would have fooled anyone else. Concern, desperation, regret. But now I knew better. Maya, he breathed, trying to pull me into a hug. I stepped back sharply. Don't touch me. He froze. The mask slipped for a second, irritation flashing in his eyes before he plastered on fake concern again. I thought you were inside. I thought you and Mateo... I thought you... Burned alive? I finished for him, voice trembling but steady. Isn't that what you planned? His jaw clenched. Maya, listen to me. You don't understand what kind of trouble I'm in. Yes, I do. I've seen the notebook. He stiffened. His eyes went wide, real fear flickering behind them. You went into the house? I know everything, Darius. He swallowed hard. Then you know I had no choice. No choice? I hissed. You tried to murder your own family. He flinched, his eyes darting around nervously. Lower your voice. No, I said. Why did you do it? His facade cracked. Because they were going to kill me. You don't know what kind of people are like. They said the debt had to be cleared or... So you cleared it with my life. His silence was the answer. The tourist with the map stood up. The water seller stepped forward. Detective Pierce's voice spoke through the earpiece. We've got enough. Officers moving in. Darius noticed movement. His gaze darted around. Then suddenly, he bolted. He ran through the park, shoving past people, sprinting like a cornered animal. Officers chased him, shouting orders. But then, he made a hard turn, straight towards me. Before I could react, he grabbed me and yanked me against him. I felt something cold press against my throat. A knife. Stay back, he screamed at the officers. I swear I'll do it. Detective Pierce raised his hands, attempting to de-escalate. Darius, don't do this. Let her go. Shut up, he roared. His arm trembled violently, the blade tapping against my skin. I could feel his breath on my cheek, frantic, unhinged. Maya, he growled in a voice I barely recognized. You should have just died like you were supposed to. Darius's grip tightened around me like a vice, the blade trembling against my skin, not from hesitation, but from the frantic adrenaline pumping through his shaking hand. My heart hammered so loudly it drowned out the chaos around us. People screamed, scattered, ducked behind benches. Officers yelled commands, each one echoing through the park like a warning shot. Detective Pierce stood 10 feet away, palms raised, voice calm but sharp. Darius, listen to me. You're not walking out of this park with her. Let her go. Darius laughed. A short, broken sound. You don't know what they'll do to me. You don't understand. She ruined everything. His voice cracked, eyes wild with a mixture of terror and rage. If I go down, I'm not going alone. His arm jerked, the blade grazing my neck. A sting followed, warm liquid sliding down my skin. A shallow cut, but enough to send panic rushing through me. I forced myself not to scream, not to pull away. Any sudden movement could push him over the edge. My breath trembled. Darius, I whispered carefully, this isn't you. He barked out another twisted laugh. Isn't me? Then who have you been married to, Maya? He pressed the knife harder, and the crowd gasped. You should have just stayed in the house. It would have been clean, quick. Now look what you've made me do. I felt something inside me shatter. Not fear, but the final remnants of the illusion I once lived under. This man had never loved me. Not really, not truly. And now, stripped of control, the truth showed in every twitch of his face. Behind him, an officer shifted slightly, just an inch. Darius saw it. Move again, and I end this, he screamed. A sob escaped me before I could stop it. The world narrowed, my vision tunneled. Mateo's face flashed in my mind, my little boy with his wide eyes and brave whisper at the airport. I couldn't die, not like this. Not in front of half the city. Not letting Darius rewrite the ending of our story. Detective Pierce's voice softened. Darius, listen to me. You're not walking out of this park with her. Let her go. No, Darius breathed. No more talking, no more chances. I'm done. His arm twitched. I closed my eyes. A single gunshot cracked through the air. Darius jolted, the force of the impact ripping him backward. The knife clattered onto the pavement. His body crumpled behind me, clutching his shoulder, screaming in agony. 2 officers rushed forward, pulling me away. My legs collapsed beneath me, and I sank onto the ground, trembling uncontrollably. Detective Pierce knelt beside me. It's over, he said quietly. You're safe. But it didn't feel over. Not yet. I looked back. Darius lay pinned by officers, his face twisted with fury and disbelief as the cuffs clicked shut. You did this, he spat at me, his voice raw. You ruined me. No, I whispered, standing on shaking legs. You ruined yourself. The aftermath, the arrest, the trial, the months of court hearings, they blurred together. The evidence from the safe, the burner phone messages, the notebook with his own handwriting, all of it built a case so unbreakable even Darius's expensive defense team couldn't crack it. He was sentenced to decades in prison, and for the first time in years, I could breathe. Mateo and I moved into a small but warm townhouse. I started therapy, he began to heal. Slowly, the nightmares faded. Slowly, laughter returned. One evening, months later, Mateo crawled beside me on our new couch, resting his head on my shoulder. Mama, he murmured, are we safe now? I kissed the top of his head. Yes, I said, we're safe. Because you were brave, because you spoke up, because you saved us. He smiled, soft, proud, growing. Life rebuilt itself, piece by piece. And I learned something no fire, no betrayal, no heartbreak could take away. I survived. We survived. And that is a victory bigger than any tragedy. But what we didn't know then was that surviving would make us stronger than we ever imagined, and the next chapter of our lives was only just beginning. If today's story touched your heart or kept you hooked, you can show your love by sending a super thanks. Your support helps me continue creating more powerful life stories for you. Thank you truly for always being so kind and supportive. I can't wait to read your thoughts about the story. On your screen right now, you'll find 2 new stories that I highly recommend, filled with emotions, twists, and lessons. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe for many more inspiring life stories. Until the next one, sending you love, respect, and gratitude. See you in the next story.